Hey guys, we came to the range today to take a quick look at, and this gun is clear, the PSA Dagger Micro with this EPS carry on it that Holosun makes. And there's nobody at the range, we're the only ones here. But you can see it has a glass on the back of it, glass on the front to protect it. And when I went to install this, I ran into a couple of problems with it. So PSA sends you screws to mount your Holosun when you order it as a package. The screws were a little too long when I went to mount it, and your depressor plunger rod here for your extractor runs directly underneath one of the screws, and I was touching the top of the rod when I put it on. This Optic comes with a plate to mount under it, but I didn't want to use the plate because it would raise the Optic up too. You can co-witness really good with these sights from PSA on this gun along with this Holosun Optic on here. So what I had to do was shorten the screws. I'll show you how I shortened those screws up here. And then this is how I mounted the Optic. This is a PSA Dagger, the mini dagger they make. It's a 9mm. It is a Glock 43X clone. This is the Holosun, let me make sure I get this right, the EPS carry, enclosed pistol sight. So there's a glass on the back to protect the little light that's projecting up on the glass in the front here. So you don't get dirt, lint, water, anything in there. It's an enclosed system. It also has the little solar panel on the top for power. There is a battery in it also. The PSA Dagger is cut for the 407K Holosun Optic, and this new ESP carry is cut to fit that same cut. So the 407K, the ESP Optic is going to fit it also. Just for comparison, here is a 407K and this is the ESP Optic. They are the exact same height. They are the exact same length here. They are the exact same thickness going this way when you mount them. The only difference is, let me put it together here, maybe you can see that. Can you see how the ESP Optic sticks out just a little bit right here? It's a millimeter wider than the 407K is. But other than that, everything else is the same. The screw holes pattern is exactly the same, and it takes the same screws in either one of them. This Holosun ESP is going to come with 3 sets of screws in it. It also comes with a plate in case you got another type of gun with a different cut on it and you want to mount this on here. This PSA Dagger is cut for this Optic, so I will not have to use the plate. PSA sends you another set of screws. When we take our screws off, we're going to set our plate here, and that is a metal plate. A lot of them are plastic today. One thing you definitely want to do is you want to clean these screw holes out, okay? So I just use some brake cleaner to do that. Let's spray a little bit on a Q-tip, and I take the Q-tip and I just try to screw it down inside the hole. You can see it's actually dirty, so make sure you do clean it, okay? So you want to drop it in and dry fit it first and make sure it's good and tight all the way around. Now, it does hang off on the sides of the slide just a little bit each side, but so does the 407K. Let me show you how to decide how long the screws need to be to go in here. You can take a toothpick. I'm just using a Q-tip and I'm dropping it in here. Now remember, on the right side of your dagger, that's where your extractor is, and your extractor plunger depressor rod runs directly underneath this screw right here. So when you look through this hole, that's what you see is the top of that extractor plunger depressor rod. So you do not want to tighten your screw down to where it starts touching that rod, or if you do, your extractor is not going to work properly. So what I do is I take a little Q-tip, a wooden Q-tip, and I drop it in here. I just take a black marker and I come in flush and mark it across here. So now I know how deep I need to be right here. If I go beyond that black mark, I'm touching the extractor, depressor, plunger rod in there. We don't want to do that. So, all right, I put the screws in here. This screw is from PSA and this screw is from Holosun. They're the proper thickness of screws, but when I set this up on top of it, as you can see, the Holosun screw is going to go down and hit the plunger, and the screw from PSA that came with the Dagger Micro is also going to go down and hit the plunger. But they give you a plate to mount this with, and if you utilize that plate to mount this, now you see, make sure you guys can see that, the PSA Dagger screw is not going to touch the plunger. Going to be close but not touch it, but the screw from Holosun is going to touch the plunger. So what I am going to do, I don't want to use this plate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shorten the screw up so that we don't need the plate. So let's do that. And since I'm going to shorten the screw, I'm going to shorten the Holosun screw. So I measured the screw that PSA sent me is 10 millimeters. I measured the one from Holosun, it is 12 millimeters. And my plate is 1 millimeter thick. So I'm going to take 3 millimeters off this screw that Holosun sent me. So what I did is I marked each screw using blue painter's tape. I just cut it and I marked it. So I want to take off what's sticking out outside the blue painter's tape. So I want to tighten that up in the drill, and let's go over to the belt sander. To make sure the screw is the right length, we put it back in the Holosun and we use our gauge that we made, and we are at least a millimeter away from the black mark on our gauge. So we're not going to hit our plunger rod. We will need to put some Loctite on this screw though. So we put a little Loctite on our screw. We're going to drop it in. Not too much Loctite. The last thing you want to do is get Loctite on that extractor plunger depressor rod down in there. Okay, so we're just going to snug these two down by hand, and we are going to use this Wheeler wrench to make sure that all we have is 15 inch-pounds on this thing. 13.2, 15 inch-pounds, and 15 inch-pounds. So that's what we're looking for when we tighten this down. Grab your slide nice and tight and squeeze it, and try to move your optic. Make sure your optic doesn't move. It's nice and tight on there. You want to be sure that extractor still works. To make absolutely sure, let's take the extractor depressor plunger rod out of the gun and make sure that we've got what we need in there. This is your extractor plunger depressor rod, the spring, and the spring loaded bearing that it rides on. So make sure we don't have any Loctite on it. Make sure it goes in, comes out nice and free, to be sure this screw that's directly over it doesn't press down on that, okay? So let's put it back together. Here it is on the firearm. It does hang off a little bit on the sides here, but so does the 407K that Holosun makes. It hangs off a little bit also. We've mounted the gun in the gun vise. We got the laser bore sight in it, and now we're just gonna put the green dot on our optic. We're gonna match it up with the laser out there. So the last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set this in the vise, and I'm gonna leave it upside down in this vise for 24 hours while that blue Loctite dries, because I don't want any of that blue Loctite to drip down on that plunger rod. So putting it upside down like this overnight will prevent that from happening.